For months, quiet rumors have surrounded King Charles and Lady Louise's place within the royal family. Rumors about royal titles began to circulate, but nothing was confirmed. Then suddenly, headlines claimed Lady Louise is now officially a Her Royal Highness Princess. The story spread fast, leaving many people surprised and curious. But is this really a major shift inside the monarchy, or just another wave of royal speculation? Stay with us as we break it down and reveal what's really going on. The 1999 promise that defined Lady Louise's childhood. It's often said that history doesn't change overnight, and that behind every major shift, there is always a reason. That is certainly true in the case of Lady Louise. To understand why this conversation feels so dramatic today, we need to go back to a time before she was even born. We need to return to a promise made during one of the most difficult periods in modern royal history, a time when the monarchy itself was under intense pressure. The year was 1999. Britain was still deeply affected by the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997. The public grief had been overwhelming. Flowers filled the streets. Crowds gathered outside royal residences. But as the shock faded, sadness turned into anger for many people. Questions were asked about how the royal family had handled events. Criticism grew louder. One issue in particular caused strong feelings: Diana losing her Royal Highness title after her divorce from Prince Charles. To many people, that decision felt unnecessary and cold. Diana remained the mother of a future king, yet she was no longer allowed to use the title of Her Royal Highness. For millions, it seemed like a harsh final gesture towards someone they still loved and admired. Because of this, the monarchy began to face a serious image problem at that time. Public trust was already reaching rock bottom. There was a sense that change was needed. And the way that change came will shock you. Keep watching for more. It was in this atmosphere, fragile, emotional, and politically sensitive, that Prince Edward married Sophie Rhys-Jones in June 1999 at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. Alongside the wedding celebrations, Buckingham Palace made an announcement that at the time appeared modern and thoughtful. It was stated that any future children of Prince Edward and Sophie would not use royal titles. They would not be styled as his or Her Royal Highness. They would not be known as Prince or Princess. Instead, they would use the titles of an earl's children. Prince Edward had been created Earl of Wessex rather than given a dukedom, which is a higher rank. This choice was seen as part of a wider plan to create a slimmer, less formal monarchy. The idea was simple. Their children would grow up with more privacy and fewer expectations. They would have the option to live more ordinary lives, possibly even pursue careers outside royal duties. It was presented as a forward-thinking decision, a way of adapting to modern times. Then, on November 8, 2003, Lady Louise Alice Elizabeth Mary Mountbatten Windsor was born at Frimley Park Hospital in Surrey. Her arrival was dramatic. She was born prematurely while her father was on an official visit to Mauritius. There were real concerns at the time, but thankfully, both mother and baby recovered. Here is where the story becomes genuinely fascinating, because the legal machinery that governs royal titles in Britain is not a clean, modern piece of legislation. It is a patchwork of royal proclamations and historical precedents, some of them more than a century old. The most significant of these is the Letters Patent of 1917, issued by King George V during the First World War. By that point, the royal family, then called the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, was in a deeply uncomfortable position. Britain was at war with Germany, and the royal family was conspicuously German in name, heritage, and dynastic connection. So George V did what monarchs in crisis often do. He reinvented. He changed the family name to Windsor, and he issued the Letters Patent to formally define who could use HRH and the titles Prince or Princess. The rules were these: the children of a monarch could use HRH and Prince or Princess. The grandchildren of a monarch through the male line could also use these titles, but great-grandchildren could not, with one exception, the eldest son of the Prince of Wales's eldest son. These rules are transparently gendered. They apply only through the male line. And crucially, they can be overridden at any time by new letters patent issued by the sovereign. Under these rules, Lady Louise by birth, as the granddaughter of a reigning monarch, she was legally entitled to be styled as HRH, Princess Louise, under letters patent issued by King George V in 1917. The rules were clear. Grandchildren of the sovereign in the male line are princes or princesses. But her parents chose not to use that title. Instead of Princess Louise, she became Lady Louise. The decision followed the promise made in 1999. It reflected her parents' desire to give her as normal a childhood as possible. She attended regular schools. She stayed largely out of the spotlight. Compared to other young royals, her upbringing was quiet and carefully protected. And this was made known when she turned 18 in November 2021. She made no change to her title and has shown no indication she will at any point in the future. Her mother Sophie had predicted exactly this, saying before Louise's birthday that she and her brother James had the option, but that it was highly unlikely they would use it. But now, as of 2026, something within the monarchy appears to have shifted, enough for King Charles to revisit this long-standing decision. So why bring this matter back into focus now? What has changed after all these years? If you're curious to find out, stay tuned. The monarchy in crisis. Why the conversation is happening now. Now, if this conversation is taking place at all, it is because the working royal family has a serious and growing problem. When King Charles came to the throne with his stated vision of a slimmed-down monarchy, the theory was sensible. The execution, however, ran into a series of crises that no one could have fully anticipated. First, and most serious, was the king's own health. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer, discovered during a procedure for an enlarged prostate. The specific type of cancer has never been publicly disclosed. Charles stepped back from public-facing duties for around 2 months to focus on treatment. He returned to public life in April 2024 and has continued at a busy pace since, but the episode underscored a fundamental vulnerability. The king is not invincible, and the monarchy cannot run lean if its most senior figure is unavailable. Then, in December 2025, Charles shared encouraging news that his cancer treatment would be scaled back into a precautionary phase, crediting early diagnosis and effective intervention. The update was widely welcomed, but the episode had already left its mark on the institution. The second crisis was equally destabilizing. The Princess of Wales, Catherine, was diagnosed with cancer in early 2024, following abdominal surgery. For months, she withdrew from public life entirely. Her recovery was genuine, and her return warmly received. But her illness removed the monarchy's most popular figure from the front lines at precisely the moment the institution needed her most. And then there is Andrew. In October 2025, Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles had initiated a formal process to strip Andrew Mountbatten Windsor of his remaining royal styles and honors. Letters patent were issued on the 3rd of November, formally removing the style Royal Highness and the title Prince from him, a consequence of the ongoing pressure surrounding his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. He was also served notice to leave Royal Lodge, his residence in Windsor. Andrew had already been absent from public royal duties since 2019, but his formal demotion removed any lingering possibility of his return. That is 3 major subtraction events from an already thin roster of working royals in less than 2 years. And because of that, the royal house is looking for an addition, one that can take up tasks when the time comes. According to royal expert Richard Fitzwilliams, the royal family may one day look to Lady Louise to take on a more active role, noting that With only a handful of senior royals under the age of 70, the monarchy faces a genuine staffing challenge in the years ahead. And former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond has pointed out that, for the next 15 years or so, the working royals are going to become extremely thin on the ground. Against that backdrop, the quiet, composed, increasingly capable Lady Louise Windsor starts to look less like a sideline figure and more like a solution, and that's why King Charles is calling her up. But before we get to the potential title change itself, it is worth pausing to consider who Lady Louise Windsor actually is as a person, because this story has sometimes reduced her to a chess piece in a royal game, and she is considerably more than that. Those who have encountered Lady Louise at public events consistently describe the same things: natural composure, an ease with people that does not look performed, and a quiet intelligence. She is not someone who appears to be playing a role. She appears, and the word that keeps surfacing in royal commentary, to be genuinely herself. She shares her late grandfather, Prince Philip's love of carriage driving, competing at a serious level in a sport that demands physical skill, coordination, and calm nerves. Following Prince Philip's death in April 2021, she honored his memory by driving his carriage at the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June 2022, an image that moved the crowd and said something quietly powerful about who she is. And that's not all. Lady Louise took a holiday job at a garden center before heading to university, a choice that speaks to a genuine groundedness in someone who could easily have spent that time building a public profile. She is now studying English at the University of St. Andrews, the same institution where Prince William met Catherine Middleton. And in 2024, she joined the Tayforth UOTC, the British Army's University Officers Training Corps unit, becoming the first female royal to do so since Queen Elizabeth II. She currently holds the rank of Officer Cadet in the Army Reserve. She did not have to do that. She chose to. At Trooping the Colour in 2024, Louise was notably the only non-working royal to appear on the balcony of Buckingham Palace alongside the Wales children, a placement that was almost certainly not accidental. Royal expert Christopher Wilson has described her as a dark horse contender, to be a decorative and useful asset to the royal team, saying that she charms all who meet her. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams has noted that her choice of A-level subjects, including history, politics, and drama, seems particularly appropriate, since the first two would obviously be useful for a working royal, and royalty is also theatrical. Now that makes one ask, what exactly has been reported? Stay with us as we dive deeper into this. What is actually being reported? According to speculation circulating across many sources, King Charles has made a quiet but deliberate decision. He is reportedly calling Lady Louise into a more formal royal role, with serious discussion around officially confirming her as Her Royal Highness Princess Louise. Now, Buckingham Palace has made no official announcement, but here is where it gets interesting. Because when you look at what has already happened in plain sight over the past few years, the speculation does not look like noise. It starts to look like evidence. Think about September 2022. Queen Elizabeth II had just died. The nation was in mourning. And inside Westminster Hall, 8 grandchildren of the late monarch stood vigil over her coffin: William, Harry, Zara Tindall, Peter Phillips, Beatrice, Eugenie, James, and Lady Louise. Louise stood for 15 minutes guarding her grandmother's coffin alongside the future King of England and the rest of the family. She was 18 years old, had no royal title, and had spent her entire life outside the spotlight. And yet there she was, at the center of the most watched royal moment in decades. Her mother, Sophie, later revealed she had been slightly holding her breath the entire time, not from fear, but from overwhelming pride. That was not a background appearance. That was a statement of trust from the institution. Then came the coronation. On the 6th of May 2023, Louise attended the crowning of King Charles III and Queen Camilla at Westminster Abbey. During the procession that followed, she did not walk. She rode. She was placed inside one of the horse-drawn coaches with her parents and brother, a coach procession reserved for members of the royal family, moving through the streets of London in front of a global audience of millions. The following evening, she attended the coronation concert at Windsor Castle. 2 high-profile, meticulously planned events. 2 deliberate placements. Again, no title, but all the visibility of someone being prepared for one. And consider this. At both the Westminster Hall vigil and the state funeral, Louise was spotted wearing a silver necklace in the shape of a horse, a quiet, personal tribute to her shared love of horses with both her grandmother and her late grandfather. She had worn the same necklace at Prince Philip's memorial service earlier that year. It was not noticed by many at the time. But those who did notice understood exactly what it meant. It was the gesture of someone who is fully, emotionally, and personally invested in this family and its history. Not because a camera was watching, because she genuinely is. Now add one more detail that most people missed. In June 2025, Lady Louise was absent from Trooping the Colour, the first time since her memorable 2024 balcony appearance. The reason? She was still at university in St. Andrews. She prioritized her degree. And far from being read as a withdrawal, royal observers noted it as the mark of someone making considered, mature decisions about her time. The kind of person who shows up when it counts and does not use royal proximity as a social event. That too is a signal. So when you hear that King Charles may be formalizing Louise's role and potentially confirming her Royal Highness title, the speculation does not come from nowhere. It comes from a pattern of quiet, consistent presence at the moments that define the monarchy. A pattern of personal choices, the vigil, the necklace, the coach, the military training, that all point in the same direction. Royal commentators have suggested that when Prince William eventually becomes king, he will likely need additional support to manage the demands of a modern monarchy. Some royal editors have even expressed the view that he may look to trusted family members, including his cousins, to help share official duties. In those discussions, Lady Louise's name has quietly begun to surface. The direction seems to be taking shape. The possibility is being talked about more openly, and her role in the future no longer feels unthinkable. But there is one detail that strengthens this case even further, and it begins in a place few people were paying attention to. To fully understand why Lady Louise is being discussed as the monarchy's next formal addition, you have to understand what was lost 4 years ago, and what that loss exposed. In January 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan, Duke and Duchess of Sussex, announced they were stepping back from their roles as senior working royals. They left for California. They signed lucrative media deals. And in doing so, they tore a visible hole in the working royal structure that has never been properly repaired. The institution lost 2 able-bodied, internationally recognized members overnight, and the ripple effects of that departure are still being felt today. Harry and Meghan's children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, carry full royal titles, designations that came automatically when Charles became king. The family lives in Montecito. They are not working royals. They do not attend Sandringham at Christmas. They do not stand vigil. They do not ride in coronation coaches. The titles remain, the duties do not, and the institution has been left to absorb that contradiction quietly, while also absorbing the loss of Andrew, the health challenges of Charles and Catherine, and the relentless pressure of maintaining a full calendar of royal engagements with a fraction of the people it once had. Now look at Lady Louise. She carries no title. She has never asked for one. And yet she was at Westminster Hall. She was in the coronation coach. She attended the coronation concert. Lady Louise was on the Buckingham Palace balcony in 2024, the only non-working royal King Charles permitted to stand there. She is in the Army Reserve. She attends Christmas at Sandringham every year. She performs, in other words, every function of a working royal while holding none of the formal designation. The contrast with the Sussexes could not be more direct. They have the title. She does the work. And it is that contrast, quiet, structural, impossible to ignore, that makes the speculation around Louise's elevation feel less like gossip and more like logic. Titles in the royal world are never just words. They are a signal about who the institution trusts, who it is investing in, and what kind of loyalty it chooses to reward. The same letters patent mechanism used in November 2025 to formally strip Prince Andrew of his Royal Highness title could, at any moment, be used to formally confer that same designation on Lady Louise. One instrument, two very different messages. And right now, everything the palace has shown points toward one of them. The monarchy needed a counter-narrative to the Sussex exit, a story that says, not everyone leaves. Some people stay. Some people stand vigil and ride in coaches and wear horse necklaces to state funerals without being asked to, simply because they believe in what this family represents. Lady Louise Windsor has been writing that counter-narrative quietly and without fanfare for years. The question is no longer whether the institution has noticed. It clearly has. The question is simply how and when it decides to say so officially. But the story is far from over. It will surprise you to find out what Lady Louise will gain when she takes on this title. What Louise would gain and what she would give up. When you look at the benefits that come from the title, it is pretty obvious, some of which are formal recognition as a senior member of the royal family, access to royal resources and infrastructure, the ability to take on official patronages with the full institutional weight of the crown behind her, and a public platform of enormous scope. For someone with genuine interest in public service, and those who have watched Louise closely suggest this is real, that platform represents an opportunity to effect meaningful change. But there are significant costs. The HRH title comes with obligations. It comes with scrutiny that Louise has, so far, been largely spared. As Marie Claire has noted, a journalist covering the royals described Louise as someone who might be asked to help save the royal family's reputation, but would be mad to do it. The media attention that follows an HRH princess is categorically different from the relative privacy Louise has enjoyed as a lady. Every relationship, every night out at St. Andrews, every opinion expressed publicly would be filtered through the lens of HRH Princess Louise. That is a permanent shift in how she moves through the world. And importantly, her parents made that decision in 1999 with a clear purpose: to protect their children from the full weight of royal life. Sophie has spoken openly over the years about wanting them to grow up understanding that they would likely need to build their own careers. That is why they chose not to use Her Royal Highness titles, even though their children were entitled to them. The option was always there, but the expectation was that it probably wouldn't be taken. When Lady Louise turned 18, she did exactly what her mother had anticipated. She continued to use her lady title and made no move to adopt the HRH styling. For that to change now, it would require more than a decision from King Charles. It would also require Louise herself to choose a different path. And for those who have watched her quietly independent journey over the years, that may be the most compelling question of all. And that is where everything becomes even more interesting. Because while the speculation grows louder, Lady Louise herself has been sending a very different message, not through statements, not through interviews, but through quiet, consistent choices. The clearest signal we have is what she has consistently done: attend, quietly and without drama, the royal events she is invited to. Christmas at Sandringham in December 2025 saw both Louise and her brother James present, and both chose, without fanfare, to continue using their existing titles. Her signing of the family Christmas card as Louise, rather than Princess Louise, was not accidental. It was a choice. Whether it is the last time she makes that choice is the question the royal world is watching. Louise is expected to graduate from St. Andrews in 2026. That moment, the completion of her degree, is being widely identified as the natural inflection point at which decisions about her public role will crystallize. What she does in the months after graduation will tell us everything. Does she move quietly into private life, perhaps pursuing a career connected to her military training? Or does she begin accepting royal patronages, appearing at official engagements in a formal capacity, and gradually transitioning into the working royal family? Her boyfriend, Felix de Silva Clamp, is described by those who know them as making them look like a lovely, relaxed couple without any airs. He accompanies her on the carriage driving circuit. Their relationship appears grounded in the same normalcy that has characterized her whole life. Whether that normalcy survives a title elevation, and whether she would want it to, is another open question. What is not open to question is the situation the monarchy finds itself in. PR expert Alison Lancaster has observed that the idea of Lady Louise stepping up as a working royal is a fascinating proposition packed with intriguing possibilities and potential pitfalls to navigate. That tension, the intrigue and the pitfalls, is exactly what defines this moment for the House of Windsor. For the institution, Louise represents something rare and genuinely valuable right now. An untarnished name, a reputation built entirely on dignity and quiet competence, a connection to the late Queen and the late Prince Philip that carries genuine emotional resonance with the British public. In a period when the monarchy has lost Andrew to scandal, Harry to departure, and has watched its two most senior working members face serious health challenges, Lady Louise Windsor stands out precisely because nothing bad has ever been said about her. That is, in royal terms, an extraordinary asset. But the decision to take the title of Her Royal Highness is totally up to her. What do you think? Should Lady Louise accept the HRH title? Is this the right move for the monarchy, or does it undo everything her parents worked to protect? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear them. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. And click the next video on your screen. You will not want to miss it.